Welcome, everyone. My name is Catherine Wendt with Syscon, for those of you who don't know me, and with me is Chris Wendt. We have been living and breathing version 20 for about a year and a half now, rewriting custom integration pieces, migrating data sets, dealing with the new releases from Sage, and the product is unfolding very nicely, but there's been a lot going on, and as Brian mentioned, the phone has been ringing off the hook. So we've got a handful of questions that we've been receiving regular things about, and we'll cover those. We've got some great new features we want to make available to you and let you know what they are. And then we've got some other things that we wanted to share. We'll keep that short and concise, but I think we can knock a couple things out right at the beginning, and then we're happy to open it up for discussion. Between us, we have migrated, and I'd say Chris has migrated literally hundreds of data sets in this last year and a half. So we've got a little info for you on that, and then some things coming up for that final step of migrating your payroll archives, your fiscal archives. So let's kick it off. And Brian, if you'd like to make me the presenter, I'll turn off the webcam so we don't cover up your screen, and we'll start with these first items.
All right, there you go, Kath.
Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned, this focus is going to be on version 20 of Sage 100 Contractor and what has changed. So very exciting way to kick off the new year, very exciting for all of us. Lots of great things here. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the change in the data structure and location. That is boring and dry, so we're going to touch on it. We're going to show it to you just in general, and if you need more specifics, we'll be happy to get back with you. We're going to talk about supervisor, which has gone away, administrator, sysadmin, company admin, what's what and what do they mean. There are some nice new features I want to make sure that you guys are aware of, and Chris has a few to share as well. The most common problems we are hearing about, and those are the phone calls over the last couple of weeks, and also the things that we just tend to see the most of. Some programs that are compatible with Sage 100 Contractor version 20, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So I'd like to start with the data structure and location. And in starting with this, what I'd like to do is stay on my screen for a moment here and share with you a little bit about the structure. And again, this is a little dry, so stay with me. Most of us are familiar that we go to the M drive or the F drive or the H drive or whatever it might be, and we look for our MB7 folder. And under that, we have all of our all of our data sets, we have our report forms, and a number of other things. That is going away. And with version 20, that is all installed, and the version 20 data sets live in a folder on the C or D drive of the server, not a mapped drive, in a folder called Sage 100 Con. And when you open it up, it's structured in this way. There is a backup folder, which has the nightly backups that are supposed to automatically be running. We'll share a little bit about that with you. It does a tune-up. We think of it as a reindex, but a tune-up and some other things at night and creates a nightly backup. That goes in this folder. And then for those of you who we might have closed their payroll year with you already or some other task, we're making on-demand backups, and this is where they go, down to that C or D drive on the server. The second folder is common. These are common reports, and there's some structure there on how those are shared. The third one is company. And this is where you're going to see all the company data sets that have been migrated over. Different company names, fiscal years, payroll archives, those are going to be there. That's how you know what's been migrated. It's all going to live under this company folder. There are a couple of other folders here, but the most common ones that you're going to want to be familiar with are the backup folder and the company folder. So that's it for the data structure that I wanted to share on this. MB7 is going away. Sage 100 Con is what it's all about, and that is installed on the C or D drive of the server. Chris, did you have something else you wanted to share about the structure?
I think you covered most of it. The new structure is definitely a lot different. People are so used to just reaching in that MB7 folder and kind of making quick fixes, workaround stuff, and that just doesn't really fly with the new version of Sage. And most people don't have access to that Sage 100 Con to get to it directly, which is a lot different, especially when you're working at a bigger company. Maybe one of the people has access. So when people are saving those reports in that default location there. saving it
So
where
I
they
know,
can't get back to it.
and I know some of our some of our clients are pretty mature users, and they're pretty able to go around and make a copy of a folder or rename a folder. And now you don't do it that way anymore, right? Isn't there a specific place we have to go to rename or make copies of things?
Yeah, with the new version of Sage, it's a way more robust backend, which is great because things are a lot more reliable. But at the same time, that means you don't get to just rename your company by changing the name of a folder. You need database admin. It's got to change all sorts of file share things and names and pointers and all sorts of other things. So when you try to do those little workarounds now, it's definitely not the same.
So that's all going to be in this third icon. That's the brand new icon, the database admin tool. And with this one is where you would create that backup folder, or you would rename, or you would restore a backup, or make a on-demand copy backup that you can rename, by the way. You can restore a company from backup, and when you do, you can change the name of it. So there are some features there. So really, it's about this database admin tool then, Chris, right?
Yeah, this is basically the new way to manage your MB7 folder is open the database admin tool. Is kind of the equivalent of the version 19.
Okay, great. So let's pick up where we are here then. So the next thing we wanted to share with you is supervisor, administrator, sysadmin, company admin. What? Why are these different? Why all these different names? And why can't I see what I want to see? And that is a question we've been getting daily for the last 3 weeks. So Chris, I know you wanted to share a couple specific screenshots. I'll just bring the first one up and you let me know what you want to do.
So the first thing that we get all the time is, how do I get in as supervisor? And that is, I'm sure most of you guys have already worked through this, there is no more supervisor. So the replacement for it is that you can let any user be the database administrator. What that means is, go ahead and click one more time for me, Kathy. When you log in and you open a company, you have an open company with administrator rights option. And that is only available to check for users that have access to it. And it's a nice way that when you go in, what it used to be is you log in as supervisor, and let's say you added a record, it just said this was created by supervisor and you couldn't tell. So this is a lot better, more modern, and accurate way of tracking those things as it goes through. It also means you don't have to share a password, which is never something you want to do. So the database administrator means you can get in to Sage with that higher level of rights. You can add users, you can change field names.
So Chris, just as a quick example, would F7 be one of those things where the F7 sets security? Would that be one of those things where you have to have the rights for administrator rights and click that box when you log in order to use it?
That's exactly right. So if you were to go in there, even if you had those rights, didn't check the box, logged in, it's going to tell you that you need to open it with those rights. Then you check that box, log back in, and it'll let you do that F7 button and get in there to actually change that name. You also get to do some other cool things, like you can view the record history with that F7 modification, or you can do the F7 with the administrator rights, sorry.
Got it. Okay, so I think you wanted to share a little bit about that next level of security.
So the system admin is what a lot of people have been talking to us about for the last week. And the system admin is what gets you into the database administration program. And that's the separate program. Go ahead and click a couple more times there for me. And that means you can start database administration. What that gives you is the access to this other program outside of Sage, brand new program. This is what you use to create backups. This is what you use to rename your company. This is what you use to archive your payroll data, which is why we've been getting so many calls on that. Now, a user can be a database administrator. A user can be a system admin, or a sysadmin as it's sometimes called, or they can be both. But click that one more time for me, Kathy. Just because they're a system admin does not necessarily mean you can open with administrator rights. So you need to make sure that you know the right people are allowed to be a system admin, and the right people are allowed to be a database admin. you might want to give someone the option to be a database admin because they might be changing a field name, but you don't really want them archiving your payroll data or renaming your company. Or you might want to give your IT users that system admin rights so that they can manage your database administration correctly without necessarily having them log into your data.
So in other words, you could have your IT person have the rights to get into the database admin tool and troubleshoot the backups, or set them to save only the last or the only 1 week or whatever, but that you don't have to give them rights to get into your data.
Exactly. This is a big security plus for Sage. Sage did a good job of really improving the security with this new version.
Great. Anything else you wanted to mention on this?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Okay. All right. The next slide here is most common problems. And I was really hoping to do new features first. So I don't know, did I totally mess that up? I must have. So do you mind if we do the new features first, Chris?
Let's do it.
All right. So what I have open here on my desktop is the sample company. And so it's got some goofy dates and things, but I think it'll give you a good example of what some of the options are here. So here's something that many of the bookkeepers and controllers I've run into are really excited about. If you're going to make an entry, an adjusting entry, and perhaps it's a fee that maybe the bank put on you. Right now, if you were to do this and set it up, it would come up on the bank reconciliation in the adjustments section. But it's really a fee, and most of us would consider that maybe something that should come up under the checks. You can now say this is a check. Or if you have a small deposit adjustment, maybe it's a refund from somebody, you would be able to go ahead and say it's a deposit, and on the bank reconciliation, it'll show up in the deposit group or in the check group instead of the adjustment group. The adjustment has not gone away, so if this truly is an adjustment, something that you definitely want to see separate, like a journal adjustment perhaps, you can go ahead and leave it right there, and it will show up as an adjustment on the bank reconciliation. So I think that's a great feature. I know that Mary in our office is really excited about this one. She wanted to be sure it made the list for today. One of the other new features that is good, and I've heard people are excited about, I'm ambivalent. I'm not really sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but there's an option with the cost codes to look them up with some restrictions on them or open it up completely. So as an example, what I have set up for you is I'm in the 4.2 payable invoice and credit screen, and I've set up a fictitious accounts payable record against my Trepin Motel, and it's a direct expense. So of course, when I save, I'm going to see my job cost screen. I'm bringing in my default job and my description, and now I want to pick a cost code. So if I go ahead and I do this lookup, if this job has a budget, I can see the job and phase cost codes specifically, or I can see the cost codes specifically on the budget for this job, or I can choose to look at all cost codes on my list. This can be really helpful because if I'm the AP person, I may not necessarily know which cost code I should be using. Maybe it's a part or a material or something that could really be in more than one category. And by being able to select just the ones that are on the budget for this job, I have a much better chance of getting this accurate. However, if there's an unexpected cost, I, in the accounts payable department, do need an opportunity to pick a different cost code to show that it is in fact something that we did not budget, but is an expense to the job. So this has some flexibility. It has some opportunity to really drill down and make sure that the selections, when the entries are being made, match what the budget was. And frankly, within your own company for the policy, it could be that if they don't see a matching one, before they finish, they can check in with the project manager. The rub there is there'll be a delay until you can see the AP invoice on your schedule. but this could be a handy tool, one that you should definitely explore and play with. It comes up when you choose the cost code in the cost screen, and right here you're going to be able to choose how you want to view that. So that's another new feature that we think is going to be a great tool for many of our clients. Here's another one. We have many clients who perhaps own their building and the company, or perhaps they have more than one company. And it's a little frustrating because nothing on the tray tells you which company you've opened, and so you're clicking around trying to find it. You now can change the background color. So if you go to the 7.1 screen, which is where the company data is housed, you can click on the company color and you can actually choose something else for the background. And we've done this by choosing the color of the check. So for Syscon, our check stock is blue, but we have a second company and that check stock is green. So I have blue on the background for Syscon and green on the background for that other company. And in this case, I'm just going to make this purple, and you can see we get a nice light purple here. And even before I save it, I can say, whoa, that is too dark, or no, I don't care for that at all. I can make another choice and go ahead and save. It's that simple, and that might help you visually, just as a reminder, which company you're in when you start making entries. So really love this one. I think this was a good choice on their part. The last one I'm going to share with you is I'm going to use an example of the 2.4 screen. And basically, it's a printer refresh. You can actually do this in a number of different screens. I'm using this one just strictly as an example. And I'm going to use the office supply account. And I'm just going to do the preview. So the preview obviously gives us the printout to the screen. And in the past, we would be able to do file print. We can, from here, drill down. So I see this is dated 5/8. And it really should be 5/31. So that is trans number 1887. So I'm going to drill down. I'm going to change the date to 05/31/16, and I'm going to save. And as we all know, this doesn't show that I made a change yet. It still says 5/8. Here's the new feature. Choose refresh. It refreshes it, and there is our 5/31 for trans number 1887. So I don't have to regenerate the whole thing. You just choose File, Refresh. You can still do File, Print, as you always could before. And so this will be a nice handy feature, refreshes the view as soon as you've made the change. So I think some of you are going to really like that one too. So Chris, I think you have a few that you wanted to share.
I do.
So why don't I
Brian,
turn this? I'll turn this over to you.
Awesome. I'm really excited about that printer refresh one. I think that's I do that a lot when I do this.
Okay. Glad you love it, Chris. Glad you love it.
So I have a couple other features here. One of my favorites, actually these are all my favorites. I'm really excited about all these new features. This is that gets me up in the morning. When you're creating a payroll record, we get all these things up. People have an accrued vacation and how much vacation they have left, and you have to like look up the employee and everything. If I were to just type in this employee number in version 20, if they have any vacation available, it pops up right here in red, nice and bright, letting me know what I can actually allocate to this person. So here he's got a week's vacation. He probably just had one day and he asked for a week off. Maybe you don't do that. A lot of times companies only pay out what vacation they have available. So this actually gives you that information without having to take the extra step of looking at the employee. We also have another filter. If I go to employees, in the employees, we always recommend when you archive the payroll year that you don't, Brian, I'm getting a little echo. Is that you or maybe Kathy, if you wouldn't mind muting that one?
Yeah, I was muted.
Okay, so when you archive your payroll year, it gives you the option to get rid of terminated employees. We actually recommend you leave them in there for a lot of reporting reasons. But then you go to your employee lookup, and there's all these people in here that aren't there anymore. And you can see employee 1 and employee 2 here are status 3. So I probably don't really want to see them every time I look up employees. In version 19, nothing we could do about that. But in version 20, we have this new options. And I can say edit inactive. And I can just go ahead and check my inactive button for these top 2 people. And now this is showing me inactive records right now. If I were to turn that off, they're not showing up here anymore. So next time I go to my employee lookup, they are not in my way. It really declutters a lot of these screens, especially where there's like tons of people listed. It does not mean that they're gone. So that was employee number 1. If I go to employee number 1, I can still see all of his info. I can still run any reporting if I want. But it tells me down here really nicely that it is in fact inactive. If I want to bring them back on, it's just as easy as go in here, options, edit inactive settings, which is exactly where I was before. Got to scroll back up to my all statuses. And then I can uncheck these guys. So now I can see them all again, and it's back to normal. So this works on a number of screens. It works on the parts lookup, employees, jobs, clients. You have this option all over, and it's always under that options and that edit inactive settings wherever it's available. We also have these new custom fields. So a lot of companies on their jobs or employees, they have all these fields filled in. Their user defines are taken up. They repurpose some of the fields. These screens are just packed with data, but sometimes you need to capture even more than that. They now have this little option. It says enter custom fields. If I were to click this, it brings up a list of custom fields I've already set up. So for this employee, I have his license plate. I have if he's on-site check pickup. So if we're holding it here instead of mailing it to him, and it's a little checkbox for me. His favorite color is blue, and he has 4 pet fish. So this is like a nice little thing here. And when I go to my next guy, I don't want to save any of those changes. I can see his info. So this is always available, and you can set it up however you want. Now, some of these things you really want front and center. Other times you want it kind of out of the way. So right now, this is only showing up if I press this little button here and it brings them up. However, if I were to pin this, that means that every time I open my employee screen, it's automatically going to also open my custom fields. And I can see them as I click through and have all of that here. Now, the best part of these is just how customizable they are. So maybe I want to add another one, and you do need to be logged in with administrator rights for this. And I want the name of this cat. It's a character. It'll be 30 characters long. And I can save that. And you're going to watch it just get tacked on to the end here. And this cat's name is Buttons. So we'll save this. This is something that is super flexible. Again, it's on most of your screens, your jobs, your clients, all those things. And it's really something that can be really useful for a lot of people in tracking job info or client info. We can also see another new feature here is the audit log, the audit history. Who made what changes when? This is something anyone who's done training with me, I've really highlighted this in the version 20 training, but we'll just do a quick review of it again. If I'm logged in with administrator rights and I want to know who added this cat's name, because I see that it's here and it's new, I can go to view and record history. This tells me all the changes, when they were made, what changes were made. If I were to click on this at 5:10 p.m., I can see all the fields for the employee on the left, what they were before the edit was made, and what they were after. And as I scroll down, I'll notice a bold field here. The accrudification went from 0 to -40. So someone added this in right at that time. And I can see it wasn't just someone, it was this user. They were on this computer, and they did it with Sage. I can see the custom field change that I just made. The cat's name was changed to Buttons. I just did that now. You can see when it was made, all those things. So that's a really nice tracker. So when you open a job and it says it's closed, but you know it's still open, you can actually find out when that change was made, who made it, when, all those things. We've been getting a lot of questions about adding users. and the database. And do they have administrator rights? What about resetting their passwords? All that. In your 722 user list, just where you used to add them before, you can add them in a lot of the same way that you used to. So if I were to want to add Brian in here, I can still just type in the name Brian. We have a new field that says integrated security. This means they're using Windows authentication. And Brian's password is going to be house. We're setting it up for him. I can still set his security groups. This is all very similar to how it used to be. If I want him to be able to log in with administrator rights, I can choose to put a yes here or not. And then when I save it, it's going to add that user. That's it. Very similar. Brian's in here now, but his password went away. So now if I wanted to see there's no way for me to see what he had in there before. Version 19, I could say display passwords. That was pretty common when Sage was initially around. Most modern applications actually have it this way where you can't look what they had before, but you can reset it. So I can type in my new password of what I want it to be, save it, and once again, I have reset his password. The Windows authentication users look a little more like this. Now, about 95% of people on version 20 are still using the SQL authentication, which still uses the username and password like this, but a handful of us put the Windows username here, the domain, and that, and their username and the password is going to be automatically set by that. So these are kind of a little overview of managing those users, some of the new ways to manage it. And I think the hidden password is a really big security improvement from version 19. I'm really happy to see that this is in there now. So that about sums up the new features I wanted to highlight. So Kathy, I'm going to switch it back over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. And Mary just reminded me that one of the other features, and you can play with this on your own in Sample Company, is in the payroll record 522. You can do options and you can change the period for a posted record. In the past, that has been quite a process when you've needed to go through those steps. And now there are some steps that you can go through right through the program that'll walk you through that. So I would encourage you to play with that with your Sample Company data set where you can't hurt anything and you can get familiar with it. So that's great. And then I think what I'd like to do is move into these most common problems then. So one of the most common problems that we've gotten calls on over and over again is my check format went away. It's printing checks wrong. Or I've got to click through all these fields again. When you migrated to version 20, it did not remember the screens that you had hidden or some of the defaults that you had set. So if you're going to print a check, don't know if I have anything selected to print, I do. It used to be that it would remember which of these you picked, and most of you have your company name in front of it. So it would be Syscon.check_AP. So S comes after C, and it wouldn't have been my default. In version 20, after you've migrated, you simply need to choose the one you want, choose defaults in the upper left-hand corner, and save your printing defaults. And then it will remember all over again. You're just not in the habit of having to do that. We did that years ago when you went live on the software. Now you just need to do it again because version 20 did not remember those things when you migrated over. Similarly, if you're in an AP entry screen, every field is up here, every field. And many of us don't need all of them. So a reminder, you highlight the column you don't need. You right-click in the highlighted section and hit Hide Selected Column. You can do that for each of the ones you want. You can drag across multiple fields. Once you've hidden them and resized them so that you have the view that you remember or want without anything highlighted, right-click one more time and save your current grid view. When you return back to this screen, it will remember and it will go back to this format with those hidden. This works in the AP, AR, payroll, any of your entry screens. If you've got fields that you're finding yourself clicking through a million times because you don't use them, in version 20, it just didn't remember for you. Set it up one more time and you'll be all set to go. this is not something I'm going to necessarily show you, but I had one client who contacted us, and their trial and final save process, because of the number of payroll records they run, would take anywhere up to maybe 45 minutes to run payroll between the trial and final saving calculation. With version 20 on their first payroll of the year, it was less than 2 minutes for 146 records. They were so excited. So we are already seeing some benefits to the speed increase on the version 20. Now, many people have also said that when they log in, it takes a while for that first screen. Many things are set up when you first log in. It's looking for your printers. It's authenticating your licenses back to the home world stage. And it does take a few moments, but once you're on, most of our clients are seeing some faster speeds in processing, a progress bill, trial compute, final compute on the payroll records. So that was good news. Another common problem that I'm running into as I help people with their payroll closing at the end of the year is when you go to do the update in the 5.4 screen and you're doing the automatic Atrix updates to get the latest reports, what's happening is when you go to choose the W2, Microsoft wants to install some updates to C++. You can cancel, but if you cancel, it won't continue with the report. So you do have to let it install the updates, follow the wizard, and I'll just warn you, go get a cup of coffee. It takes a good 10+ minutes in order for those to install before it'll let you continue with the rest of the W2 processing there. The other thing that I've run into is it's still back in the Atrix type of situation here. Let me just go back. When you run 5.4.1, so you're running maybe your 940 report for 2017, or maybe you're doing your fourth quarter 941, and you get done running all of these, you close these windows, and you should be able to call up your state reports then. And what I've found in several circumstances is when we go to call up the state, it tells us that there's already a window running for the Atrix reports. So we look across the bottom of the tray, we can't see any windows open. We closed the program, we relaunched it, we got the same error. So what ultimately happened was we did Start Task Manager, and we brought up the processes screen, and we stopped the Atrix process. As soon as we did that, we were able to go back into the program and select the state reports without any windows being open. So just a word of warning, if you're getting that entry error where it's telling you that you already have tax form windows open and you don't see any here, go ahead and go to that task manager, which is Alt-Control-Delete, find the process, and you can end it. And then you can go right back in and pick up where you left off. So that's something I've run into in several of our payroll processes where we're printing those Q4 and year-end reports, call them. The last one was the Sage Nightly backups that didn't run. That is another one that we're getting a lot of phone calls on. We've actually seen that on our own server as well, where we're getting some of those messages. The Sage Nightly backup is set up in that database admin tool, the one that we were talking about earlier. And you have some options there about the frequency. Let me see if I can pull that up. First of all, you want to make sure that the backup, in fact, is set to run. And we're recommending you keep the latest. And hopefully you have a solid backup system, perhaps Datos or something else similar to that, where that you're already saving your data. So that should not be the issue. However, when you do a backup, I'm going to should be able to change the backup schedule. Here we go. So when you do this, you want to make sure that you've set these for the latest night. And what's happening and what we're finding is, yeah, oh, scheduled night maintenance, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to bring a couple up. These are set to keep only the latest. You also have options of keep for 2 weeks or keep for 1 week. These files can get large, especially if you have attachments, so we're recommending that you just keep only the latest, and that you make sure that your backup system on your server is doing the incremental backups so that you can recover should there be a corruption or some other problem there. If these are failing, if these nightly tune-ups are failing, talk to your IT company and make sure that the service account associated with this process has the rights to write to the file locations. If you have some questions beyond that, you can give our office a call, talk to one of our techs. We'll be happy to talk to your tech. So that's another common one that we're getting. Bottom line, if your backups for your server are running, you have a backup. What this warning that you're seeing is that the Sage nightly backup built into this database admin tool did not run. It is not the same as saying that you do not have a backup. So we just wanted to convey that for sure. Great. Well, we've already covered a lot of stuff with you. We want to be sure we have time to get to your questions as well. So the only other thing we wanted to mention was regard to version 20.7 and higher. 20.7 has some known issues with printer redirection. So if you have a terminal server, you log in remotely. If you're in a hosted environment, there are issues with printer redirection for version 20.7. I'd also mention that 20.7 was a tax update, but it was in the middle of December. That was well before Congress finalized the 2018 federal tax tables. We are still waiting, all of us, for the next release that will have the new federal tax tables, plus any other states that have reported in since the middle of December. We'll be happy to keep you updated about when those are available. Printer redirection has been fixed with the 20.7.19 release, but again, we're just suggesting you wait another week or so and give them a chance to get the tax updates so you don't have to do an update and then a week later do yet another update. So as an aside, we also wanted to make sure that you knew that some of the custom programs that many of our clients use or that we get questions about are now compatible with version 20. They have been rewritten. Our field integrated time system, our FIT system, our over under billing analysis tool, indirect cost allocation program, waiver generator, sworn statement, cost to complete, cost plus billing. These are all now available and compatible with version 20. So coming up will be January 25th. We have a demo about mobile apps working in the field time collection, and we'll be using our FIT system and Sage 100 Contractor in order to do the demo about field time collection. And then on February 8th, we're going to go through all the steps for migrating those fiscal and payroll archives. We've done hundreds of these, so we know all the ins and outs. And those of you who have been on the software for any length of time, over years, there are fields that weren't required 4 or 5 versions ago, and now they are, and they're causing problems with migrating fiscal and payroll data sets. So we've got a couple of steps that we're going to share with you that you can check your data before you start. There's nothing more frustrating than archiving your data set and in the middle it fails. You have to go back and do those things and start the whole thing over. So we're going to cover all of that on February 8th. We waited till February because we know most of you are very busy getting out your W-2s, 1099s, your quarter 4 reports, and getting your information ready for your accountant so that you can start looking at tax things for 2017. So we've saved that for February 8th. You can sign up on the website or call the office, and we'll be happy to share that info or get you signed up. So now we'd like to open it for questions, and we'll give you some answers.
The change orders on a phase that hasn't had a previously approved change order on it shows the approved amount from a change order on another phase. This is most likely coming up on a report view. So when you're printing the report, seeing those amounts, and Sage actually has made a small change with how change orders relate to change order lines in the back end of the database. And so I have noticed on a number of change order specific reports that we have had to make modifications to certain calculated fields and the Sage report writer calculations to handle these new setups. So that might need a little adjustment to your report, hopefully a small one, to get that new setup in there.
All right, I got another one here. Do we need to set up all reports, checks, views, etc. to mirror our current defaults?
So check report view. Could you read the details one more time?
Yeah, Kev. There you go. I sent it to you, Kev.
So to hopefully mitigate some of this delay issue, I actually just switched sitting next to Brian so he can read off the questions and I can answer them. So do you have to set up all your reports, checks, views, etc. to mirror your current defaults? So between version 19 and version 20, you lose most or all of the defaults as they come through. However, you don't necessarily need to like go through every single screen and redo it. Because as you're working in version 20, you need to be aware of what it was before and make sure that you're not just running through and clicking the buttons without double checking and keeping an eye on it as you go. All right. Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you read the question too. Okay. So I noticed you're getting the same warning message when you're saving an employee record. Will this go?
So I think one of the errors is in our test data sets, it's running old tax tables because these are older data sets. And you might have even noticed it yourself once you put in the new Social Security limit for 2018. Until you install the next tax update, you're going to get the warning that the Social Security maximum exceeds the current limit for 2017. So as long as you've got the 2018 limit in place for your 2018 pay records, you're fine and you can click past it. And after you install the next tax update, you'll no longer get that message.
Great. So the next question here is, what was the 4.2 cost code view by change that you mentioned in the beginning? So this one was what Kathy showed in the beginning, and it is when a job has a budget and you are entering and you are doing a cost code lookup, most likely in the 4.2 screen under the costs, and you hit that lookup window, you have view by, and it will say job and phase or just job or all, and it allows you to filter which cost codes are displaying in your available list without having to go back into the job budget to see what's there. Thanks, Kathy, for showing that. So has anyone else had a problem with W-2s printing duplex? My workaround was to print them to a PDF file and then unchecking duplex printing. Kathy, have you run into that?
I have not. Usually that's a printer setting, both in the print screen and perhaps on your printer itself. I have not run into that. I've not seen that in any of the ones that I have done. Usually it's something over here on the screen where you might have duplex checked and perhaps that was an accident, or it might be a setting on your actual printer.
So AP job cost screen skips fields. Any fix for this? I'm on version 20.7.18. So I have not run into this before. Kathy, have you?
So there is an opportunity to decide that a field should be skipped. So I'm on with administrator rights. I am in a 4.2 screen. I am in user-defined 1. I'm going to hit my F7 key. And I can say that I would like this field skipped during entry. Save that. It becomes a lighter gray. And if I was to just go ahead and click through, it will skip that field. And it's going to bring me right down to user-defined 2. Perhaps you could check with your F7 key and see if in fact that button had been checked and simply uncheck it. So I'm just going back with F7, I'm unchecking it, saving, and now it should not be skipped. If it's something more than that, love to have you give the office a call and see what you're looking at.
Great. So the AP tab, this is from the same person, it could be related. The AP tab doesn't take us down to
discount field anymore, and it makes data entry extremely slow having to use the mouse. So I'm
Yes, well, so let me tell you what that's all about. Sage heard from users that they were frustrated that they had to use the enter key to move around. So they have made a change that the tab key will move you forward. And the problem is that does create frustration because now you cannot just tab down to the fields that tab used to take us to. So I think that some user input to Sage would be in order here. It has greatly changed our data entry here, and it's to accommodate people who are coming from other systems that are commonly using tab rather than learning the new pattern or habit of using enter. So we'd love for you to reach out to Sage and let them know that that is frustrating. I don't think it was a good choice. I think they were trying to address user requests.
Great. So we send the ACH advice of deposit via email for payroll and AP. In version 20, we noticed that only one sender was working, even though we had two separate ones set up in the version 19, payroll and payables. Syscon Tech tried to help us with this and ultimately found that only one would work. Is this a known issue, and will it be addressed by Sage? So I have not seen any known issues listed on this one. Kathy, have you?
No, I haven't. And my first question would be, did you tell Sage? We often do, but it carries way more weight when you, the user, contacts them and asks them about a change like that, where you used to have more options than you have now. So I would definitely encourage you, if you don't want to sit in their queue, at least to send it in via email as a question or concern and let them know that you needed that functionality, you counted on that functionality, it's not there, and have them either get it on their list of known issues, or we'd love to hear if they respond to you.
Great. Overall extreme slowness bringing up invoices in the 3.2. Any fixes coming for the slowness? So slowness is a very different issue with version 20, and there's a lot of considerations. If you did not upgrade your server with it, or if you're not hosted, there are factors with what type of network connection you have to the server. There are factors with the disk read and write speed. There are factors with how much memory you have allocated to your SQL server. There are factors to just about everything, the CPU on your server, your local workstation. So that's kind of an overall, it's too hard to just say, I can guess, but there are a lot of things that we can do to look into that and really get a more definitive answer on it.
Yeah, you know, I think the bigger takeaway is you can see that there is not a delay in the 3.2 screen for me to call up existing records, for me to choose a record. There's not a delay. So I would definitely start with your own system, your server or your environment, the machine that you're on, how much memory you have. That would be the place to start. It is not a known issue in Sage 100 Contractor, and it is certainly not experienced across the board. So it might be something that's going to be more definitive to your environment. And again, some expertise checking with your IT people, make sure you've got the basic, if not a little bit more, of the requirements on the machines that you're running it on.
If you are working with someone who doesn't do a lot of Sage, or who doesn't do a lot of Sage 100 Contractor specific hosting, and they've worked with you, version 19 over the years, a lot of people in the version 19 to version 20 transition really kept the server requirements and setup very similar to what it was. But the change has actually been significant in how Sage uses it, and requires like a lot of rethinking, repurposing, and redesigning some of those IT systems. So sometimes it's a small change, sometimes it's a big change, but I'm sure we'd be able to help you with that.
I just would also, you know what, Chris, I'm sorry, I would also add that the other one I've run into is the wrong rights and permissions for the users in a hosted environment or a terminal server, where they don't have permission for the rights and permissions they need in order to do things like report form changes and things like that, because of the new location. So that would be another thing you could ask your group.
Great. Kathy, if you want to take this one. in the 522 payroll entry, there is a field for absence codes. How do we set up these codes? I have not personally used those before, so.
So I'm familiar with the field, and I do not have anyone who uses it. It is not in any default reports, and it does collect information, but there isn't a report that would necessarily automatically be available to you in that I'm aware of. It would be something where you could use it and set up a query or create a report to use that field. So if you'd like a little bit more on that, I'd be happy to dig in a little bit with you on it. But honestly, I do not have anyone taking advantage of that field at this time, or for the last number of years that it's been available.
All right. Is there a report that gives a complete edit of what is entered in the time records? I have a new person entering time records. So I think there might have been a typo in there. There is no report that you can run that gives a full edit history, audit log history across all of the time records. That is not doable. There's no default report that necessarily pulls many detailed line items across many payroll records, though we have created similar reports in the past of custom reports within the Sage report writer. So it is possible. Need a fix on the typo to be sure of the type, but we have had a lot of requests for kind of new custom Sage reports with this new version 20, and people are seeing what they can really do with it, and a lot of times it's bringing to light, you know, things that have happened over the years and making you rethink some of those things. So we've been creating a lot of those new custom reports that have been able to be helpful in those similar scenarios. I have a fiscal year end 3/31. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I was going to say, it almost sounds like perhaps you have a new person entering and you want to check what they're doing. Sitting with them in training, spot checking records before they final compute, things like that would probably be a good training exercise. There isn't necessarily a report, and even if you did, it would be after the fact. So you might want to think about the training process a little differently and make sure that you have a procedure with the steps so that they know exactly what's expected in the various fields.
Thanks. You know, and there's always, you know, instead of just having one person enter their own time records, you could always use the Syscon fit system and just have your field guys enter it. And then the project managers can approve it and everything. Next question here. If I have a fiscal year end 3/31 and have not migrated this database yet, will I have problems with my 1099s, including the 1/117s or 1/11/17, I think, and 12/31/17?
So the answer is that Sage officially is telling us that they are not providing 2017 tax reporting in version 19. So officially their position is they're not providing the format for the W-2s for 2017, the Q4 returns for 2017, and that would include the 2017 vendor format to print your 1099s and 1096. I would encourage you to give it a shot. I mean, they didn't break what was already there. They're saying that they're not providing the most recent reports. So you can take a shot at it. The good news about the 1099s is they're form fill, because you still have to use the red forms. So run the form fill to blank paper, line it up with the 2017 forms. You may find that they're fine and you can go forward with that. If not, then you can at least have the data and maybe you type them up this year, or you could go ahead and migrate to version 20 now, and with that same data set, you'll be able to print the 1099s.
Great. Next question. Once we reset our default reports, does that push out to all users, or does each user need to reset the default reports? So this is a good question, and it would be great if you could just set them and apply it to everyone. That is, I guess, kind of doable. The new database admin tool does have a feature that lets you copy user defaults to other users. Now, there are a lot of gotchas with this, what type of user they have, whether it's SQL authentication or Windows authentication, and if they have the right permissions for stuff. There are a lot of kind of catches with this. You will overwrite their defaults. It's something that we could potentially look at, but you're going to want to be cautious as you if you were to really consider it. It wouldn't be something I could just say, click this button and do it, but.
I'd also like to weigh in that there's some really good reasons why they don't do it that way. And that's why it's never been done that way historically. My defaults would drive Mary in my office nuts. The things that I want to see, the size, how many fields on a page are different. And I need to be able to have my view be the one that I need for the entries and the things that I'm doing, which is different than what Mary would want, or Joanna, or someone else in my office. If in a typical office, there may be somebody who uses a different check stock because they run a different company. The default should be for theirs, and it shouldn't be the same as someone else. The idea here is that we wouldn't all necessarily want the same defaults, and we certainly don't want our project managers to have the same defaults as our AP entry person. So just logistically, those have never been universal. They're by person. The things that are universal is something like where I showed you that you could show a field should be skipped. That would be universal. Things you can do with the F7 key, that's across everyone. Things like saving your check format or the report form or your favorite report, that's going to be by person. I might like to see the landscape version and someone else might like to see the portrait version. Those are user by user.
Great. So the next question is, version 20 is faster at work, but not when working from home using Cisco anywhere, AnyConnect. Any ideas why? So there's actually a lot of potentials here. One big one is that if you are working on your local workstation and trying to connect to the Sage database through like a VPN style connection onto your server, which is not on that network, you are putting a fairly decent size risk for corruption. It's not really designed to work cross network like that. So depending on how you have it set up, that is a big, that is not something you want to be doing and really puts you at a decent sized risk there. That being said, we have tons of people working from home. Kathy's in Arizona right now. I'm in Chicago, and we work on the same data sets every day. And we use a terminal server style environment, which is similar to like our hosted environments. We have tons of clients using this, and that way, whether I work from Chicago or Arizona, California, Hawaii, Costa Rica, if you want to send me there, Kathy, I'm going to get the same Sage processing speed anywhere I go, as long as I have a good internet connection. That's always the case.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is for many tech groups, they want a VPN for the authentication. That's fine, but you need to launch over the RDP session or a terminal server RDP session or into a hosted environment, which you would be using the RDP. So VPN for authentication is fine, but you do not run the data set over VPN. You run the data set over a terminal server RDP.
Great clarification. Thanks, Kathy. We do have a little comment of, I use the absence field and it's very useful in queries. So,
excellent. I'd love to, okay, whoever said that, I'd love a quick email, and if you want to share with me how you're using it and the success you're having with it, I'd love to hear about it. Just a few minutes, just a few sentences would be really helpful. That would be great. I'd love to hear about it.
Awesome. Can you quickly circle back and explain the differences between SQL and Windows authentication? So definitely, Kathy, if you want to bring up the login screen, there are tons of backend differences, but in terms of how it pertains to you guys, pretty much everyone on this call, the difference is when you go to log into Sage, if you have Windows authentication, whoever is logged into that computer right then is who it's going to be. So if you have like a shared workstation or something, that's not going to fly. But you can see here that it automatically filled in Syscon-inc/CWAT. So this is logging as Kathy. This also is not asking her for a password, nor will it. So Windows authentication means it's going to log in as whoever's logged into the computer, and it's not going to ask for a second password. This is really great if you're you're super good, diligent about locking workstations. Each person has their own workstation or laptop that they're working from. You don't have any shared workstations. This is my favorite way to go. I love this method. If you
and I would just add really quick, Chris.
Okay.
Chris, really quick. So the techs prefer this too because this is the most secure of the two options.
Yeah, it would also, like, we have rules in place of forcing you to reset your password every 3 or 6 months or something. There's minimum lengths, there's capitalization, numeric, and signs. All of those things are in here, great, taken care of. SQL Server authentication requires that you put in your username and your password each time. This is what we're used to with Sage. It is what comes over from version 19 to version 20 by default. And so most people have continued to use this because you didn't like lose security between version 19 and version 20 when this came over, and there was already enough changes going on. But you can have your password be the letter A for this, which is obviously not secure. And it's not as much ideal with like having to type it in every time and stuff like that. So in a perfect world, everyone would use Windows authentication. In reality, that's a lot of stuff to move. It may not be necessarily required. May not make that big of a difference. So that kind of sums up the differences there. And you know, Kathy, we are actually already a few minutes over our time, and that was the last question I have in here as of this moment.
Well, you know, I do know that we're over our time, and for that I apologize. We definitely wanted to keep it to an hour, but we certainly didn't want to cut anything off. As you can see, there's a lot to share and a lot to know about this product and this new version. So we appreciate the opportunity to share that with you this morning, and we appreciate you joining us. And if you have other follow-up, you know where to find us.